So I'm going to present to you the results from the evaluation of our program on community-based social healing model, which was an iteration on the healing program after the pilot phase. But before I start, I want to invite the audience to practice with me just one exercise, breathing exercise, so that you get to understand what I'm talking about. I'm sure most of you know the magnitude of mental health problems in Rwanda, where over 20% of the general population and 50% in genocide survivors live with mental health conditions, predominantly depression, anxiety, PTSD. And most of those conditions derive from chronic PTSD, which is also compounded with chronic trauma. Unfortunately, only 10% of those who need mental health care services access them through our institutional or conventional mental health system, which is facility-based, individualized, and mainly medicalized. Our community-based social healing model complements the conventional healthcare systems with the integration of breath, body, mind practices with collective narrative using the tree of life and rituals. We do this through community healing assistants, whom we recruit from the community, train them, and supervise them to facilitate healing practices through therapeutic groups of maximum 20 people per each group. They meet once a week for 15 weeks, and then they transition to long-term support groups, but with additional socio-economic activities, including lending circles, solidarity work, and eventually cooperatives. Why do we integrate breath, body, mind practices with collective narrative and rituals? Rituals like dancing, drumming create safe space for storytelling. And telling and retelling your story bring participants or restore the sense of belonging, self-worth, meaning, and purpose. But studies show that for people living with severe traumas, storytelling may be very challenging because of dissociation, which is due to the disconnection between mind and body. Now, the practice of breath, body, mind techniques actually restore the emotional and self-awareness by the stimulation of the interoceptive brain structures, and also stimulate the neurophysiological processes which regulate emotions, and also enhances social engagement, improving the capacity of empathy, compassion, and understanding. Now, we implemented this program last year, and as I said, it was an iteration of the model after the pilot phase. 32 community healing assistants were recruited from the community, trained and supervised to provide facilitation of the therapeutic journey to 900 participants, but we conducted the survey in 704 people amongst them. So, data collection was conducted by community healing assistants, and they used the mini international neuropsychiatric interview based on the DSM-4. Tools like PHQ-9 for depression, GAD-7 for anxiety, and PCL-5 for PTSD were used to screen for those conditions. And data analysis was conducted by a private consultant. As you can see, the majority of participants were females from all ages and mainly farmers. If you look at the effects on depression, anxiety, and PTSD, you can see from the baseline and endline difference, there is a huge, statistically significant difference, and the quality of life was also statistically significant. When you look at the lost days due to health conditions, you can see here the mean in the pre-intervention and also the mean in the post-intervention. There is a very statistically significant improvement. I have not brought all the indicators here, but I will do a summary of the results. So you can see PTSD, anxiety, and depression. So we had 70% of participants who recovered from depression, 69% from anxiety, and 55% from PTSD symptoms. And you can see that we recorded around 50% decrease in lost days. And this also had effects on, increase in children's school attendance, 26%, 65% less intimate partner violence, and 49% less conflict with the neighbors. Of course, underneath statistics, we have very inspiring stories from participants. Like, I was almost dead, but now I'm alive. A couple of people saying, we were almost in hell for 7 years of separation. Now we are in honeymoon, and we are able to produce and get children back to school. And also the government appreciates the program as inspiring to the Rwandan program called ndi Umunyarwanda. We are all Rwandans. So what's next? As of now, we are planning to conduct a randomized controlled trial starting next month to generate more robust evidence so that we can support the scale-up. And really, our long-term strategy is to engage with the Ministry of Health and other institutions so that the program can be integrated in the primary healthcare system to facilitate that scale-up. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dr. Jean Bosco can take us through how do you define the recovery from depression as highlighted in your presentation?
Thank you for the question. As I said, we used two measurement instruments. The mini international psychiatric interview based on DSM-4. This was for screening, and we have two characteristics for depression. So you have either, this despair, chronic fatigue. And the second thing is you no longer have pleasure or you no longer have interest in something that you are used to be interested in. Now, when we do screening, you have either both or one of those characteristics. And then we move to understanding the level of severity of depression using primary health questionnaire, PHQ-9. So this is what really gave us the level of depression. So you either have mild or moderate or severe. Now, when we say people recovered from depression, those are people who were depression symptom. So they were like a depression-free. Most of them had severe depression, and at the end of the intervention, none of the symptoms, or mild or moderate. So I didn't present all the details about the severity, but to cut it like in a nutshell, those are the people who had zero symptom after the intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for presenters. My question goes to Dr. Jean Bosco and Dr. Turan. I was interested in your work, the community, and I think we want to learn from you because you have sessions with parents, trauma healing, and capacity building. How do you measure the long-term impact? Because for us, you can see that in the short term, you can see the improvement of symptoms, but later on, you can see that there are some relapse because the new challenges happen in their life. How do you have any follow-up system to continue them? So how is the impact of your program for long term? When I say long term, there are things like so we want to run from.
Thank you for the question. So that's a limitation. Up to now, we have not measured long-term impact yet. But we presume that in the long run, people sustain healing for two things. So first of all, we equip them with skills to be able to address or to cope with the situation. But the second thing is when they do complete 15 weeks of like a formal therapeutic journey, they transition into self-help groups or long-term support groups. And really what I have learned is, based on a study that was conducted in Nairobi, in Kenya, they compared people in groups with therapy and other people in groups with no therapy. But results were almost the same. So I believe that group is powerful in terms of healing. But moving forward, we have now integrated long-term impact measurement. So we'll do it with our RCT, but also with other subsequent interventions, 6 months later or 1 year later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jean Bosco. I think you addressed the question to 2 individuals, if I was right, if I'm right.
Thank you for your questions, and I think it's also the similar answer is the limitation of a small pilot study. So we aim to develop a randomized control that we can measure the effect, long-term effect, not only right after the interventions. I share that sometimes we still receive the feedback from the participants that they were promoted or they got married, so but we didn't have a data collection office so for that. But we will plan to do that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the response. Yeah,
thank you very much. I have one question. I think it can be either addressed by Yonzima or the colleague who well presented the use of CBT. I appreciate it. My question is this: from the data, Yonzima, you presented, when I simply compare the improvement in depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, simply from percentage, I can formulate hypothesis saying post-traumatic stress is resistant as compared to conditions. Or I may say the improvement PTSD is as compared to condition. My question is this: why, for example, the PTSD be resistant as compared to the condition? My assumption is perhaps the group setting may prove depression because the group setting will connect, will enlarge the social network, and participants will benefit from that kind of social support, emotional support, maybe direct support, they may be, anyway, do you agree with me that PTSD doesn't improve like what we can see in the condition? Why do you think it's distant? Can we assume that individualized treatment may be better than a group setting as far as PTSD is concerned?
Thank you, Professor Vincent, for the question. So I had the same question comparing the results here with the results we got from the pilot phase. Because in the pilot phase, actually PTSD recovery was 74% as compared to depression recovery, which was 59%. Now, may it be due to technical, because for the first time we did the data collection with health professionals, like psychologists, systematically. With the second, the evaluation of the iteration, we did the data collection with community healing assistants. Now, where do we stand? I would say that it's a learning process. and with time we will understand better. But moving forward, also we are looking at the tool that we have used. We found that there was a technical error. When we use the Mini, the system, we set up a system that makes like additions. We say if you have 3, then you move forward, and it was not automatic. So we thought that it was probably a technical glitch. So let's learn more with next interventions and evaluations. Now, for the rest, I would only argue whether like in group or individual therapy may be better than group. 2 years ago, Interpeace conducted like a research in Bugesera, and they found out that most participants don't feel comfortable with individual therapy modalities. And actually this explains why, well, not totally, but it's one of the factors that may explain why when you look at people who are aware of services, the availability of services, 62% from your studies, only 5% could use those available services. Why? Because most people don't feel comfortable coming to a health, like a psychologist for individual therapy. So I would assume that group settings may be, based on that, may be more effective in PTSD as it is in depression in our setting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for Dr. Jean Bosco. I think Prof also you did one among or 2. I think if you have something to add about the question.
Because my intervention doesn't work with, we don't measure PTSD, so I think I cannot contribute from my finding to your questions. You didn't.
So going to the next one.
Thank you so much. My question goes to Jean Bosco. And I know that cultural norms is one of the challenge barrier we met during our implementation of mental health intervention. And I'd like to know if you have met some of those challenges and how you tried to overcome this challenge in your program intervention. Thank you.
Mean culture? Yeah, so I think I have learned a lesson from the community. We don't even mention mental health. So when we teach, when we train community healing assistants, we speak in terms of symptoms. Of course, when we teach them, we address all like a basic notion on trauma and depression, anxiety, PTSD, and psychosomatic manifestations. But when they do recruitment, because they do it one-on-one, and even when we do kind of campaign, we don't mention mental health. Because in the minds of people, it's itself stigmatizing. That's what I have learned. We only say, okay, those people who have issues in sleeping, have like chronic headaches, or who need spare, or have, you mention symptoms, and then, people feel more comfortable to join groups. Another thing, actually this corroborates what I have learned in Zimbabwe from Friendship Bench. They use grandmothers to treat depression. And when they started, they were using something like mental health disorders. People were afraid to go to seek for help. Now they changed, they removed the mental health. They said friendship bench. If you have this problem of despair, you come and you sit on the bench, you speak with the mother, like a grandmother, and it worked. So I think we need to probably be more innovative in our context, because people are afraid of hearing about like a mental health, because when you have a mental health disorder, it's crazy. This is what people think. Thank you.